This is One Earth Radio. If anyone is still listening out there, you are not alone. The world feels smaller now, even though it has broken apart. The air carries a heavy smell that I cannot describe without feeling sick to my stomach. It is dark outside, darker than usual, and I hear distant sounds like thunder, but I know it is not thunder. It has been about 10 days since the first shots were fired, or at least since I first started counting. I do not know the exact start of all this madness, because it happened so fast. One moment there were news reports of rising tension between old rivals, and the next there were missiles lighting up the sky. Then came waves of panic, and then everything else. I should explain where I am. I am in what used to be an old storage room beneath a radio station building that is no longer standing above me. The top floors collapsed after the first attack in this city. I do not know if the world still calls this place by its old name. I will not name it now because it might not matter, but I can still speak. I have a working microphone, a small power source, and some battered old receivers. I have managed to get on these frequencies that carry my voice, and maybe you can hear me. Maybe you are hiding in a basement, or beneath a table, or lost in some old barn out in the countryside. Maybe you are holding a small radio and shaking hands, straining to catch a whisper of a human voice, so you know you are not the last person alive. I do not know what you face out there. I can guess. Smoke, dust, shattered glass, broken streets, ruined homes. Some say entire cities have been flattened, their lights snuffed out in a matter of hours. I have heard rumors that power grids have failed across large parts of the planet. Communications are patchy. The old networks people relied on have burned or gone silent. Governments, if they still exist, do not answer calls. Military groups are everywhere, but it is hard to know which side is which. There are armies on the move, but the lines have blurred. Strange groups roam, wearing no flags, taking what they want. I have heard that farms have been set on fire. I have heard that ships on the seas have vanished beneath black waves. I have heard that drones fill the skies in some parts of the world, watching, waiting, then striking. I have heard that nuclear blasts have turned old capitals into craters. I have heard children crying, calling for parents who never return. I have only my voice to offer. Let me try to give you what I know. In the first few days, the fighting began over some border far away. It was just a dispute at first. Then it grew. Allies joined on both sides. Old grudges flared up, bombs fell, missiles streaked across the night, cities took hits. At first it seemed like there might still be room for talks, but the talks failed. Leaders blamed each other. They said if one side did not back down, the other would respond. They did respond. They responded with steel, fire, and poison gas. They responded with heavy blasts that lit the skies for miles. They responded with weapons that none of us ever wanted to believe would be used again. My receiver sometimes picks up faint voices from other places. Most of them are crying or screaming. Sometimes I catch a distant broadcast from another lonely speaker like me, listing the names of destroyed towns, listing the numbers of refugees pouring out of broken countries. One voice I heard yesterday was a woman who said she was near what used to be a border crossing in Eastern Europe. She said thousands of people stood in line, waiting for a train that would never arrive. She said soldiers opened fire when the crowd pushed forward, then her signal cut out. I have not heard her voice since. Out in the east, I have heard rumors that a major port city was struck by a barrage of missiles. I heard that tens of thousands may have died in a single night. I cannot confirm anything. Verification is a memory of the old days, when we had fact-checkers and reporters on the ground. Now we have whispers. Now we have lost voices that break in and out of the static, telling us awful things. I must trust my instincts and share what I hear, hoping that someone else can piece together what is true. I picked up a broken speech from a man who claimed that his city, somewhere in Asia, had lost all water supplies after a nuclear blast far upstream poisoned the river. He said people were fighting in the streets over a half-full bottle of dirty water. He said he watched a group of children huddled in the wreckage of what was once a busy avenue, their faces covered in ash, their eyes wide and empty. He said he tried to help, but men with rifles shouted at him to keep walking. He said he wanted to cry, but he had no tears left. I remember the early days of all this, when we still had some form of order. Governments told people to stay calm, that it would pass, that talks were underway. But the talks ended when one side accused the other of lying. Then more bombs fell, and the cycle repeated. Before we knew it, old alliances kicked in, dragging nations that had nothing to do with the original fight into the storm. Soon every continent was lit up with battle. Missiles fired across oceans. Invisible jets streaked overhead, dropping death on cities whose names most of us had never even heard. Lines on maps no longer mattered. Everyone was a target. I have heard of people fleeing into forests, deserts, mountains, trying to find a place untouched by this madness. But even there, one cannot hide forever. Food is running low. Medical supplies are gone. People who were once neighbors now fight over scraps of bread. And when the radiation drifts in, it does not care who you are. I have heard that in some areas, the air itself glows at night, as if filled with strange fire. Survivors in those regions scratch at their skin and cough until they collapse. No doctors are left to help them. This station that I am in was once lively. I remember the sound of laughter in the halls. I remember the smell of coffee and the hum of computers. Now it is just me. My colleagues fled when the first warning sirens went off. They said they had families to protect. I understand. I had no one waiting for me, so I stayed. Maybe I was foolish. Maybe I was just too afraid to leave. Now the entrance above is blocked by rubble. Even if I wanted to go out, I would have to dig through broken beams and concrete. I survive on canned goods and stale water from old tanks. I have a small generator running on fumes. Sooner or later, I will run out of fuel. Sooner or later, my voice will fade as well. But until then, I will keep speaking. If you can hear me, if you can understand these words, know that you are still human. That matters now more than ever. There are rumors that groups have begun losing all sense of mercy, that they round up anyone they find and do awful things I can hardly speak about. I have heard that in some places, people have turned into something less than human, driven by hunger and fear. If you still care about right and wrong, if you still care about kindness, hold on to that. Do not let go of what makes you a person. The bombs can level our cities, but they cannot force us to become monsters unless we choose that path ourselves. Outside, I hear a distant boom. It might be another strike, or it might be a building collapsing under its own weight. Dust drifts through the cracks in the walls. I smell burning plastic and old wood. The air tastes bitter. Sometimes I think I hear voices just outside, people calling for help. But maybe it is just the wind. I do not have the strength to move the debris above me. Even if I could, I am not sure I would want to see what remains of my city. It might be worse than what I can imagine. Let me share more of what I know. There was a report that a major bridge connecting two countries in South America was destroyed by a missile strike. The people who used that bridge to escape one side of the war are now trapped. I heard that they tried to cross by makeshift rafts, and many drowned. Far to the north, I caught a brief signal from someone who claimed to be near a large border crossing that was heavily mined. He said he watched a family run across a field, not knowing it was filled with hidden bombs. The screams he described still echo in my mind. He was crying while telling this, his voice shaking so hard I could barely understand him. I also heard someone, a young voice, maybe a teenager, who said they were hiding in a school that had been turned into a shelter. They said they had little food left, and that the older people had begun to give their portions to the younger ones. They said the nights were filled with distant gunfire, and that sometimes strange lights flashed in the sky. They did not know what those lights were. Maybe flares, maybe something else. There are whispers of new weapons being used, things no one had ever seen before. Some claim that fields have turned black overnight, that entire forests vanished in a flash of light. Others say there are places where the ground feels hot to the touch for days after a bombing run. I have no way to confirm any of this. I only know that every story I hear is worse than the last. Some might ask, how did this happen? How did we allow it? I do not have answers. I only know that anger and fear spread faster than anyone could contain them. Maybe those who once could have stopped it failed, or maybe they never cared. Maybe it was always going to end like this, after years of building up weapons no one should have owned. Now that they have unleashed them, none of us can close the door again. I recall one voice on the airwaves, a man who said he was a pilot who refused to drop his payload on a city. He said he turned his plane around and landed in a field, then deserted. He said he tried to warn villagers nearby, but many ran from him, afraid he was lying. He said he felt shame, that he had joined the forces to protect his country, and now he saw what it truly meant. He cried on the broadcast. I never heard from him again. As I sit here, I must tell you something else. I do not know how long I can keep talking. My throat is dry, and I have to save what little water I have. But I will continue as long as I can, because if I stop, who will remember what happened here? Once we are all gone, will anyone be left to recall the madness that took us? That is why I speak. That is why I risk using the last drops of fuel in this generator. Words are all I have. Let me try to gather some of the scattered reports I have heard about various regions. In what was once part of Asia, large groups of people are said to be on the move, trying to escape areas hit by blasts. Some try to head north, hoping the cold will slow the spread of sickness. Others go south, hoping warmer lands will at least let them grow something, anything, to eat. In what was once part of Europe, old alliances are torn apart. There are too many fronts now, too many armies clashing. Towns switch hands in hours, then are abandoned, left in ruins. I have heard that some tried to form small safe zones, places where people agreed to share what they had left and not kill each other. But then raids came, or bombs fell, wiping them off the map. In what was once Africa, I heard a faint call from someone describing a coastline battered by warships firing inland. The speaker said entire fishing villages were destroyed, the survivors fleeing into dry lands where there was no water and no food. Children crying, old people collapsing by the roadside. I heard that, and I closed my eyes, trying not to picture it, but I could not help it. In what was once the Americas, chaos rules as well. Northern lands hit by strikes on key cities. Southern lands drawn into the fight when their neighbors chose sides, or when resources ran dry. I have heard of great plains turned into graveyards of metal and twisted steel, of once vibrant cities turned into silent fields of ash. It seems that no place has been spared. The old balance of power is gone. The world's factories of war keep churning out death, or did until they too were destroyed. Now what is left is a dirty struggle over what remains. Some people are reduced to throwing rocks, using hunting rifles or old knives, because the advanced weapons either ran out of ammo or malfunctioned under the stress. Among the many voices I have heard, there was one that stayed with me. A child's voice, probably no older than 12. They spoke from somewhere near what once was a busy city center. They said their parents told them to hide in a cellar. The parents went out to find food and never returned. The child waited for days, listening to distant blasts, waiting. The child said they finally crawled out and found nothing but rubble. The child kept repeating that they wanted their mother. I listened, holding my breath, as the child cried softly. Then the signal faded. I do not know what happened to them. If you are still alive, maybe you have seen such things with your own eyes. If so, I am sorry. I wish I could offer more than words. I wish I could say help is coming, but I have not heard any hopeful news in a long time. I cannot lie to you. Things are bad everywhere, at least from what I can gather. The old order is gone, and what replaces it seems even worse. There was talk that some regions tried to call a ceasefire, tried to form a truce, but someone always broke it. Distrust runs too deep now. Too many have been lost. Too much hate has been stirred up. There might be places, hidden corners of the earth where people have managed to stay out of this madness, living off the land and not bothering anyone. But if they exist, they keep quiet. They do not broadcast their location, because that might draw hungry mouths or armed raiders. Speaking of raiders, I have heard reports of groups that roam the roads in stolen trucks, armed to the teeth, taking whatever they find. People whisper that these groups do not care who they kill. They leave behind smoking ruins and bodies. Others say there are groups even worse who delight in cruelty. I shudder to think about that. If you are forced to move, try to be careful. Trust is rare now. Some pretend to help you, only to rob you as soon as you let your guard down. Some promise food but lead you into traps. The old idea of neighborly kindness is hard to hold on to in this world of ashes. Yet I must believe there are still kind hearts out there. Maybe someone gave their last piece of bread to a hungry child. Maybe someone refused to follow an order to kill prisoners. Maybe someone guided lost survivors through a safe path in the woods. Even if I never hear those stories, I must believe they happen. Without that, what is left? I will try to speak about the strange things people have reported. I do not know if they are true, or just hallucinations from shock and hunger. But some claim they saw lights in ruined streets that moved without any known source. Others claim they heard voices in burned-out homes, calling names in the dark. Some say they found footprints that do not match any animal known to them. Could this be fear playing tricks on tired minds? Or has the madness of war opened the door to things we never thought possible? I have heard a man swear that he saw figures in the distant hills after a bombing run, figures that seemed to glide instead of walk. Another voice spoke of strange sounds coming from old mines, as if something deep underground had awakened. I do not know what to make of these stories, but I share them because I have nothing else to do. In a world where so much has fallen apart, perhaps anything can happen. Sometimes I think I hear breathing in the silence when I turn off the microphone. Maybe it is just my own breath echoing in these cramped quarters. Maybe I am losing my mind. But as long as I can form words, I will continue this broadcast. We are somewhere past day 10 of this conflict. Who knows how long it has truly been? The normal flow of time feels broken. People count days by the blasts they survive, or by the few packets of stale crackers they still have left. Without stable sunlight or electricity, clocks are useless. The sky is often filled with smoke, making it hard to tell dawn from dusk. Noise comes and goes. Sometimes there are long stretches of quiet that feel even worse than the shelling, because in the quiet, we wonder what happens next. I have tried to remember old songs or poems, but my mind struggles. My memory slips away. Maybe it is the stress, maybe the lack of sleep. I close my eyes and see red flashes behind my eyelids. I open them and see darkness and cracked walls. I hold on to this microphone stand as if it were a friend. At least this device still works. At least I can still speak, even if no one answers. If anyone out there can hear me, I hope you find a safe place. If you are traveling on foot, try to move when it is quiet. If you see fighter jets overhead, hide. If you find a stream of water, boil it if you can. If you have any canned food, try to ration it. I know these are common sense things, but sometimes we forget the basics under pressure. And remember, if you meet someone who looks lost and scared, and you have something to spare, consider helping them. It might make a small difference in a world where everything else is cruel. Let me try to share more news from other voices. I recall someone saying that a major dam in the north has been destroyed, causing floods that wiped out villages downstream. Another voice said that desert lands have been bombed so heavily that the sand itself turned to glass in some spots. Another said that a high-altitude explosion caused something like an artificial aurora. Green and blue lights dancing in the night, beautiful and awful at the same time, caused by radiation and chemical fires. I wonder if there are any countries that stayed out of this. If there are places where people still sleep in their own beds without fear of a strike at dawn. If there are islands untouched by this storm of steel and fire. Maybe isolated tribes, unaware of what has happened, still live as they did before, without radios or knowledge of our madness. I almost envy them. The reports from what was once major world capitals are all similar. Massive loss of life, ruined infrastructure, people wandering aimlessly through streets choked with debris. Hospitals no longer function. Medicines are gone. The wounded lie in makeshift shelters, or simply in the open, moaning and waiting for relief that does not come. Old temples, museums, libraries have burned. The memory of human history goes up in smoke, and no one can stop it. I wish I had something hopeful to say, but hope is hard to find. At best, I can say that as long as you breathe, there is a chance. As long as your heart beats, you can try to survive another hour. Maybe if enough of us hold on, we can outlast the fires. Maybe when the weapons finally run dry, when the armies grow tired and sick, they will have to stop. And maybe then, those who remain can try to build something again, though it might take centuries to heal from these wounds. I would like to believe that not everyone who had power wanted this. Maybe some tried to warn others. Maybe someone tried to call for reason. But it was not enough. It all spiraled out of control. Now we live in the ashes of that failure. I heard a faint story about a group of survivors who found shelter in an old mine shaft. They blocked the entrance and lived by candlelight, sharing whatever they had, telling stories to keep their spirits up. They had no idea what was happening above ground, and they were afraid to leave. One of them managed to rig a small radio and picked up my signal. For a brief moment, I heard them whispering softly, thanking me for speaking. Then their signal died. I hope they are still alive. It matters that we speak to each other, even if it is one way. It matters that we remember names of places and people who once lived peacefully. I remember a time when we argued about smaller problems and never thought it would come to this. Now those old problems seem like distant dreams. Now we argue with gunfire and bombs, or we do not argue at all, just kill. If you find a place to rest, keep it hidden. If you have seeds, try to plant them somewhere safe. If you can catch rainwater, do it. Small acts of survival now mean everything. Do not give up if you can help it. Once you give up, the darkness wins completely. I will keep talking. I have to. My voice is dry, but I have a little water left. I will take a sip and continue. Please bear with me. I just had to adjust a wire. The signal was drifting. This old gear is not reliable. I must be careful. If I lose my voice, you might not hear any news from this part of the world ever again. Of course, I cannot know if my news helps anyone. Maybe you already know your own nightmares. Maybe my words just confirm what you see with your own eyes. But at least you know you are not alone in this nightmare. There is another voice out here, trapped in a room beneath rubble, speaking into the dark. Let me talk about what I remember from before. Maybe it will help us remember we were once human, in a better sense of the word. Before the war, people worried about paying bills, about going to school, about what to cook for dinner. They worried about traffic and weather. They watched shows, played games, danced, sang songs. They fell in love and out of love. They argued and made up. The world was far from perfect, but it was ours. Now it feels like we are guests in a ruin that no one owns. I remember a day when I walked along a river in the afternoon sun. The water sparkled. Birds sang. Children played on the banks. If I close my eyes, I can almost feel that warmth on my skin again. But then I open them and feel the cold dampness of these walls. I share this because maybe somewhere, someone is also trying to recall a day when life felt normal. Maybe by keeping these memories alive, we keep a spark of what made us who we are. I have also heard that some people are trying to help others. A faint call came in saying that a group in what used to be a farming region gathered survivors and tried to plant a hidden garden in a greenhouse that still stood. They were trying to raise crops quietly, away from any patrols or raiders. The speaker said if they could survive long enough, they might feed a few dozen people. I pray they succeed. Another whisper I caught said that in some remote mountain range, a handful of families found a series of caves where they stored dried food, melted snow for water, and set up a small camp. They took turns keeping watch. They shared stories by candlelight. The signal faded before I learned more, but just knowing that such groups might exist gives me some comfort. Still, comfort is rare. More common are reports of large groups of armed men moving through old highways, looting anything of value. Some set traps along roads, catching desperate travelers who just want to find a safe haven. The world has become a place where trust is deadly. Yet trust might also be the only way to rebuild something, if this ever ends. I must warn you, if you see a city skyline and think of going there to find food, be careful. Many cities are full of hazards now, collapsing buildings, radioactive zones, pockets of gas, not to mention rival gangs fighting over the ruins. Without proper gear, entering a city might mean sickness and death. Rural areas might also be risky. but at least there might be small patches of ground not yet poisoned. I say these things as if I know them for sure, but I only have bits and pieces, stories from others, crackling through my receiver. Yet these stories align in their sadness. They paint a picture of a world brought to its knees. No one prepared for this. No one knew how fast it would happen once it began. I still recall the first day I realized something was truly wrong. The television channels cut to emergency broadcasts. Sirens wailed. The air felt heavy. People rushed to supermarkets, emptying shelves. Rumors spread like wildfire, but no one believed it could get as bad as it did. Some said they would flee to the countryside. Others tried to cross borders, not knowing that soon every border would be on fire. Within a matter of days, everything we took for granted was gone. The wars of old had rules, or so we told ourselves. This one seems to have none. The weapons are too terrible, the hatred too deep, the fear too strong. I wish I could say that I believe we will wake up tomorrow to a better day. I do not know if tomorrow will be better or worse. I do not even know if there will be a tomorrow for many of us. But while I am alive, I will keep talking. If you are alive, keep listening or keep searching for some sign of hope. There is a sound now, a low rumble above. It might just be another building collapsing in the distance. I often hear these dull thuds. Sometimes I think I feel the ground tremble. Maybe more bombs are falling far away. Maybe the Earth itself is tired of all this and is shifting under the strain. If I had a map, I would mark where I think the worst fighting is. But maps mean little now. The old lines are meaningless. All I have are voices describing places by what they used to be. The old stadium, the bridge near the coast, the farmland outside the big city. Those places are gone or ruined. We must find new ways to navigate if we ever get the chance. I have a small battery-operated device that lets me tune into different frequencies. Most are static. Now and then, I catch a station trying to send out a coded message, perhaps a military channel. I cannot understand what they say. Maybe they are directing strikes. Maybe they are searching for their own troops. I turn that off quickly. I do not want to draw attention to this broadcast in case they can trace it. But I doubt anyone bothers to track a single voice down here. They have bigger targets. The smell is getting worse in here. The sewage pipes must have cracked. I have a scarf over my nose. This is my reality now. How is yours? If you are under open skies, maybe you have the wind. Maybe you see stars on a clear night. Or maybe smoke hides them. If you have someone with you, a friend, a family member, hold on to them. Keep each other strong. That might be all you have left. I heard a short broadcast from someone claiming to be near an old naval base on the coast. They said the ships are gone, sunk or fled. The docks are empty. Dead fish float in oily waters. The coastline smells of rot and chemicals. They said they saw no signs of organized rescue. Just scattered survivors picking through wreckage, hoping to find canned goods or a jug of clean water. Another voice, a very weak signal, said they saw something bright in the sky late at night. Not a bomb blast, but something like a streak of light that moved oddly. They wondered if it was a new weapon or some unexplained event. We have lost the people who could explain these things. The old experts are likely dead or hiding. We are on our own. I have been talking for a long time now. I must keep going because I promised a long broadcast. My throat hurts, but I will push on. Words are my only gift to you. Words and the truth as best as I know it. Let me try to speak of something else for a moment. Before all this, people had dreams. They wanted to travel, to learn, to build better lives. Now the only dream is a full stomach and a safe place to sleep. Is this what we have been reduced to? Perhaps for now. Survival is the only goal. Once the noise fades, if we are still here, maybe we can dream again. If you think I am only speaking of horror, you are right. But I must, because that is what I know. This is not a story with a happy middle or end. It is a record of pain and loss. Maybe by recording it, I help someone feel less alone. Maybe some future ear will listen to these words and understand what happened here. To that future ear, if it ever comes. We were humans who had so much. We had music and laughter. We had fields of grain and forests of tall trees. We had books and ideas. We had kind people who helped others. We had children who smiled in the sunlight. We had hope. But then we tore it down in a storm of war. I do not know why. I do not think anyone knows anymore. If you are alive right now, hold on to something that reminds you that not all is lost. Maybe a photograph, maybe a small trinket, maybe a memory. Let that keep you going. If you have a reason to live, you have a reason to try one more day. I will pause for a moment just to drink a bit of water, then I will continue. I am back. I had a small sip of water. It tastes stale and metallic, but it keeps me alive. My throat still burns, but I must continue. Since I started speaking, the rumbling above has grown quiet. Maybe the building above finally settled. Maybe the night outside has grown still. Night and day mean little now. With the thick smoke in the sky, light is dim even at midday. The air is colder than I would expect for this time of year. Perhaps the dust in the atmosphere is blocking the sun. I recall a voice from a distant frequency who said they saw snow falling where it never used to snow. Dirty snow, gray and brown, mixed with ash. They said people tried to gather it to melt for water, but it tasted foul. They said some who drank it got sick. Radiation, chemicals, who knows what else drifts through the air now. If you are traveling, try to cover your mouth and nose with cloth. It might help a bit. Try not to walk in open fields if you see strange burn marks on the ground. Some bombs leave behind deadly residue that can harm you even without touching you. Without proper tools, survival is guesswork. We learn by trial and error, and often error means death. I keep hoping to hear a strong voice on these frequencies, someone who can say, "We have found a safe zone, come here." But no such voice appears. Only pleas for help, cries of pain, or whispers of fear. I heard one person last night who said they found a small group of survivors who agreed to work together. They had some canned peas, a few bottles of water, and a pile of blankets. They took turns standing guard. Maybe such groups are seeds of something better, if they can avoid detection by the many armed gangs. Let me tell you what I know about the armed gangs, from what I have heard. They are often groups of desperate people who banded together under a leader who promises them food or shelter if they follow orders. They roam from place to place, taking what they need by force. Some might be former soldiers who deserted. Some might be criminals who got out of prisons when the guards fled. Some might be ordinary people who gave in to violence. If you face them, you have few choices: hide, run, or fight. Fighting is risky if you are not well armed. Hiding might be safest, but they are known to search through ruined buildings. Running is possible if you know the terrain. But what terrain remains for you to run into? The world is like a patchwork of ruined areas. No single place stands strong. I have also heard rumors of secret shelters built by the old wealthy elites, deep underground, stocked with supplies. If such shelters exist, their owners are quiet, not sending signals. They might hope to outlast the chaos and emerge later. But what kind of world will they find when they come out? Thinking of that, I remember an old story from before the war about groups who believed they could survive anything underground. They had bunkers with filtered air, clean water, seeds for planting later. If any of them managed to stay hidden, maybe they have a future. But what of the rest of us? I do not mean to depress you even more, but I must be honest. This is the world we have. I cannot pretend otherwise. Yet, as I said before, as long as we breathe, we can try to hold on to something good. A faint signal reached me once, from what sounded like a group of old farmers. They said they had a hidden cellar full of jars of preserved food. They were waiting quietly, hoping no one would find them. They whispered their fear, but also their determination to stay alive for as long as their food lasted. Maybe when things calm down, they can emerge. I hope they do. Other voices spoke of fires that never seemed to die down. Oil fields set ablaze, forests burning day and night, chemical plants releasing toxic fumes that drift with the wind. The skies over many regions are darkened not only by war, but by countless fires. Rain is rare now, and when it falls, it carries strange smells and leaves rashes on the skin of those who walk in it. If you must travel, try to find rivers that still run clear, if any remain. Boil the water if you can. If you cannot, at least strain it through cloth. Any small step might help reduce sickness. If you find canned goods, be careful if they are swollen or damaged. Food poisoning could be deadly now, with no doctors around. I think of the old world's doctors and nurses who once saved lives every day. Now many have fled or died, their hospitals bombed. Some might still be out there trying their best to help with the little they have. If you are lucky enough to find someone with medical knowledge, treat them well. They might save you or someone you care about. Caring about others is still possible. Do not let the horror steal that from you. Yes, trust is dangerous, but without trust and care, we become no better than beasts. If you have a moment where you can help someone without risking your own life too much, consider it. If enough people do that, perhaps not all goodness will vanish. I must tell you about another strange thing I heard. A caller said they found a ruined town where the wind made a sound like singing when it passed through broken pipes and hollowed-out buildings. They said it was eerie, but also oddly soothing, like the world trying to make music out of its own ruins. The caller stayed there for a night, listening to the wind's sad tune before moving on. It is odd what small comforts we might find. As time passes, I wonder if the armies still have any command structure. Perhaps generals are gone, and soldiers just follow whoever promises them safety. Perhaps the war is now just pockets of violence with no real goal. The original reasons for the war are forgotten. No one talks about them anymore. It does not matter who started it. Everyone loses. I remember reading once about old wars that ended with treaties and rebuilding efforts. But who will rebuild now, when we have scorched so much of what we need to survive? Without factories, farms, or stable weather, what can we do? It might be that our children's children, if any live that long, will grow up in a world of scraps and faded memories. Yet I keep talking. Why? Because silence would mean giving up. If someone hears me and feels less alone, maybe that is reason enough. If someone hears me and decides to spare a stranger's life, or share a loaf of bread, then I have done some small good. Let me check the receiver for any new signals. I hear someone crying softly on a distant frequency. No words, just sobbing. I wish I could comfort them, but I can only speak into this microphone. Whoever you are, I am sorry. I hope you find some rest. Another faint voice breaks through, a man whispering that he is trapped under debris, his leg broken. He begs for help, but I cannot reach him. Even if I knew where he was, I could not go. I can barely stand up in this cramped space. This is the hardest part of broadcasting, hearing cries for help and being unable to answer. I have to focus on what I can do, describe the world as it is, and hope these words help someone make better choices. If you are near a large body of water, be careful. Some say the coastal areas are patrolled by warships that fire at anything that moves. Others say the waters are filled with wreckage, making it dangerous to sail. If you have a small boat, you might try to reach an island, but who knows what you will find there. If you are near mountains, you might find shelter in caves, but watch for predators. Animals, if they still live, might be as desperate as we are. If you see strange marks on the ground where bombs fell, avoid them. Radiation might be present. If your skin itches or your hair starts to fall out, try to move away from that area. These are crude guidelines, but all I can offer. There is talk of people seeing strange lights in the night sky that are not bombs. Some think they might be satellites falling back to Earth after losing their orbits. Others say they are just meteors. Without experts, we cannot know for sure. The sky once filled with signals, now might be filled with silent metal drifting aimlessly until it burns up on re-entry. Old news said that so much happened in a short span. Now it feels like all the nations of the world have stabbed each other until none remain standing. If any government still exists, it must be in hiding. I have heard no official statements, no comforting words from leaders, no plans to end this. Just silence. If you find an old library or a place with books, consider saving a few. They might be useless for survival in the short term, but what if someday someone wants to remember how people thought before the war? Books might become rare treasures. Keep them safe if you can. Our heritage now lies in scraps. Someone once said on these airwaves that they came across a makeshift camp where people were telling each other old stories around a fire. They pretended the world outside was not burning. For a few hours they laughed and sang quietly. Then came the sound of gunshots in the distance, and they fled. Still, for those few hours, they remembered what it meant to be human. Maybe that counts for something. The silent spaces between my words weigh heavily on me. I know I must keep filling them with sound, because who knows when I will fall silent forever. My generator has only so much fuel. I have a small hand-crank device that might keep me going a bit longer once the fuel is gone, but it will be tiring. I will do it as long as I have strength. If anyone out there has found a place untouched by this war, do not broadcast it. Keep it secret. The world is too dangerous now. If you draw attention to a safe place, someone will come to take it from you. Survive quietly if you can. That might be the best advice I can give. Though I speak a lot about horror, I must also try to hold on to any faint sign of kindness. If you have a partner, hold their hand. If you have a child with you, whisper a lullaby. If you have a friend, share your last piece of bread. Let these small acts mean that we have not lost everything that made us worth saving. I recall a voice that said they found an old church still standing, and inside they lit a candle. They said people came in quietly and sat in silence, remembering better times. They did not speak, just sat there, feeling each other's presence. For a few moments they felt less alone. Then they left, taking care not to leave any trace that might bring attackers. It is strange that even in the worst times, some people seek moments of peace. The world outside my bunker is quiet now, but I know that peace can shatter at any moment. One bomb, one shell, one raid, and everything changes. Sleep lightly, if you sleep at all. Keep your ear to the ground for the hum of drones. If you hear them, hide. I have heard that drones still patrol some areas, firing at anything that moves. Others say drones have fallen from the sky as they ran out of fuel or lost their connections to their handlers. If you find a downed drone, be careful. It might still be armed. Do not try to dismantle it unless you know what you are doing. Do I sound calm? I am not calm. My heart races every time I hear a distant noise, but I try to keep my voice steady. Maybe it helps you stay steady as well. Fear is natural, but we must try to control it, or it will destroy us from inside. If you have shelter, try to store some food and water in case you must hide for days. If you have no shelter, look for places that still have walls or a roof. Even an old bus flipped on its side might give you some cover. Stay out of sight if armed groups patrol nearby. I wish I had better news. I wish I could say that someone out there found a peaceful valley with fresh water and wild berries. That a kind doctor set up a safe clinic. That a group of brave souls reached out and negotiated a truce. But I have not heard such stories. Maybe they exist and keep quiet. Maybe all we get on the airwaves are the cries of despair, because the hopeful ones stay silent, surviving quietly. In the darkness of this bunker, I sometimes think I see shapes moving in the corners of my vision. It might be my mind playing tricks. Stress does that. If you start seeing things or hearing voices that are not there, try to rest if you can. But rest is hard to find in this world. What about the larger picture? Are entire continents burning? I have heard that many coastal cities are gone, that major inland capitals have been hit by bombs. The number of dead must be huge, beyond counting. Bodies lie unburied. Disease will spread. If you find yourself in a place with many bodies, try to move on. The smell and disease will get you. Some have tried to bury their loved ones, even in this chaos. That shows that we still care about honoring the dead. If you must leave someone behind, at least say some words for them, even silently. We must hold on to any shred of humanity. I try to remember old words of comfort, but they sound hollow now. Still, I speak them in my mind, if only to calm myself. If I could sing, I would, but my throat is too dry, and my singing was never good. Maybe you can sing softly to yourself, if it gives you courage. The war rages on outside our hearing range. Even if the big battles have died down, countless small fights continue. People fight over warehouses, old supermarkets, gas stations. They fight over broken farms and useless bits of land, because what else is left? One voice said they saw soldiers fighting each other in a ruined city block, while terrified families hid in basements. When the shooting stopped, both sides lay dead, and the families slipped away, hungry and frightened, but still alive. What sense is there in that? If I had to guess, I would say that someday this fighting will slow down. if only because there will be too few people and resources left to fight over. Then we will face a quiet world of rubble and ashes. What we do then will decide if we learn anything from this. Since I cannot predict the future, I can only tell you what to do right now. Survive. Keep your eyes open, trust carefully, help when you can, but not at the risk of your own life. Hide from danger, search for clean water, ration your food, rest when safe. These simple acts mean everything now. I heard a distant broadcast from someone claiming to have seen large animals roaming deserted areas. Maybe some zoo animals escaped and now wander through empty streets. They might be hungry and dangerous. Be careful if you see such creatures. They do not understand what happened. They only know hunger and confusion, much like us. Strange how quiet my immediate area has become. I remember the early hours after the bombing here. People screamed above me, glass shattered, sirens blared. Now, just silence and my voice. The dead do not scream. The empty shell of a city does not hum. Quiet can be worse than noise because it reminds us that life has drained away. Still I talk. The sound of my own voice proves I am alive. You hearing me proves you are alive and have a working radio. That is something. Working radios are rare now. Maybe you found an old battery-powered set in a cellar. Maybe you rigged a car radio to a small battery. However you did it, you managed to listen. That means you are resourceful. Keep that mindset. Resourcefulness will keep you alive. I recall a man who broadcasted for a few hours 2 days ago, describing how he managed to filter dirty water through layers of cloth and sand. He said it still tasted bad, but it did not make him sick. Another voice talked about using old blankets and curtains to shield windows, to avoid attracting attention at night. These small tricks might help. If I hear any positive news, I will share it. But so far I have not. The channels I scan are mostly filled with static or moans, occasional distant voices cursing their fate, or calling out lost names. The world is in mourning, but with no funeral, no rites, just endless sorrow. In the old days, people would send relief teams to war-torn areas. Where would they even start now, when the entire world is torn? There are no safe bases to launch from, no stable supply lines, no standing armies of peacekeepers. Just chaos upon chaos. I should speak about what to avoid, though I have done so many times. Avoid large crowds if you can. Crowds attract attention. Avoid well-known landmarks, as they might have been targeted or turned into traps. Avoid old highways choked with abandoned cars, as they might be full of hidden dangers. If you must cross them, do it quietly and quickly. If you find old medicine, check the labels if possible. Outdated medicine might still help, but be careful. If you know nothing about it, consider if you really need it. Sometimes untreated water or rotten food can harm you more than going without. I know these are basic survival tips, but without a stable life, we must return to basics. Shelter, water, food, safety, warmth, and above all, keeping our minds from breaking. Do not lose hope completely, because then you have nothing. Even a tiny spark of hope is better than none. I once heard a voice from a mother who said she covered her child's ears during bombing raids, telling them they were just loud thunderstorms, and that soon the rain would wash the dirt away. Maybe that small lie comforted the child. Maybe we need such small comforts. The old world had weather forecasts, news anchors, political debates, sports games. Now we have this. A voice in the dark, speaking to who knows how many. Maybe just a few scattered listeners. But a few is better than none. If you must sleep, find a spot hidden from view and try not to make noise. Wild animals might be on the prowl. Human raiders too. Keep your belongings close, and if you sleep with someone you trust, take turns staying awake. Safety in numbers, but only if you trust those numbers. I have heard that some groups formed small circles of trust, each person contributing something. One knows how to start a fire, another knows how to find edible plants, another can patch up wounds. Such a group stands a better chance than lone wanderers, unless they attract the wrong kind of attention. If you have no group, you must learn quickly. The world punishes mistakes now, but you can learn from the ruins. If you find old tools, keep them. If you can start a small fire without attracting too much attention, do so and boil water. If you know how to set simple traps for small animals, that might keep you fed. But be careful what animals you eat. Some might be sick. I wish I could tell you this will end soon, but I have heard no signs of that. The airwaves do not carry peace treaties, only laments. Until the weapons run out or everyone is too tired or dead to continue, this nightmare drags on. Still, I must keep talking. If I fall silent, I abandon you and myself. Words might be weak, but they are all I have. At least I can form a bond with whoever listens. A bond of shared hardship. I will tell you a memory. Long ago, before all this, I walked along a sunny street with friends. We drank something sweet, laughed at silly jokes, and worried about nothing serious. That memory keeps me human. Maybe you have a memory like that, something that reminds you that the world was not always this way. Hold that memory close. Let it guide you through the ashes. If we survive, maybe we can rebuild some small corner of kindness. If not us, then someone after us. Perhaps these words will echo in some old recording, and someone in the future will learn from our mistakes. I know I speak of the future as if it might exist. Maybe that is my last shred of hope. Without that, I would stop talking. I have taken another sip of water, a tiny one, just enough to keep talking. The taste is awful, but it is all I have. The air feels heavier now. My lamp is growing dim as the battery wears down. I must speak by memory, feeling the microphone in my hand, trusting that my voice still goes out. You who listen, you must wonder if there is any place left on this earth that is free from war. I have no proof of such a place, but absence of proof does not mean absence of hope. The world is large, and not every corner could be destroyed so quickly. Perhaps hidden valleys or remote islands still hold quiet life. If you ever stumble upon such a place, keep it secret and safe. Someone might say, why bother? Because as long as we exist, life matters. We must try to carry on, even if we do not know how. Life is stubborn, it wants to continue. Seeds lie dormant in ash, and when rain falls, they might sprout again. Maybe one day the earth will heal, though we may not live to see it. Still, we can try not to make it worse. I have heard rumors that some people have started to gather old books on farming and simple crafts, hoping to relearn what was lost. If you find such knowledge, guard it. The machines that once fed millions are gone. We must learn to feed ourselves with our bare hands and simple tools, if we survive long enough. But that is far in the future. Right now, you must think of the next day, the next hour. Do you have a safe place to rest tonight? Can you find water tomorrow? Are there gunshots nearby? Survival is about immediate needs now. It has been many days since I heard a hopeful broadcast. Most are grim. One recent voice said they were stuck in a city center, surrounded by piles of rubble that block all exits. They said gangs patrol the streets, shooting anyone who tries to climb out. They were hiding under a collapsed building, eating rats and drinking from puddles. Their voice shook with despair. They ended by saying they might try to dig a tunnel at night, risking collapse because anything is better than waiting to be found and killed. Another voice from a distant land said that fields are strewn with unexploded bombs. People who try to gather scrap metal from old tanks sometimes lose their lives to hidden traps. Even after the armies move on, the land itself is filled with dangers. I wonder how long before the environment itself turns against us completely. With so many fires and toxins released, the air might become harder to breathe. Plants might absorb poison, water sources might turn foul. Those who manage to live might face strange illnesses. This war is not just killing us now, it may harm future generations, if there are any. Yet I talk and you listen. That is a strange comfort. Words connect us across darkness and distance. We share pain, fear, and the faint spark of hope through these fragile signals. I try to recall if I have used any words that were once forbidden, but I cannot remember much of that now. My focus is on telling this story in a plain manner, so you can understand. I must keep language simple. Many listeners may not speak this language well, or may be very young. If a child listens, I want them to understand without fear of strange words. If a child listens, I must say this. I am sorry your world looks like this. It was not always so. Some of us tried to make it better, but we failed. You must survive as best you can, and if you grow up, remember not to repeat our mistakes. Be kind, share what you have, and do not let anger and fear rule you. That might sound empty now, but maybe one day it will matter. I recall a story from another war long ago how people hid in caves and tunnels, sharing breadcrumbs and whispering lullabies to keep their children calm. If they could do it then, perhaps we can do it now. Do not give in to despair completely or all is lost. A distant crackle on the radio draws my attention. I hear someone speaking about a group of survivors who managed to repair a small water pump in a ruined town. They are handing out cups of water to anyone who comes, asking nothing in return. This is a rare piece of good news. If it is true, then at least a few souls still cling to kindness. If you are near that town, approach carefully. They might be genuine, or it might be a trap. I hope it is genuine. When I think of traps, I recall another caller who said someone pretended to offer safe shelter, then ambushed travelers for their supplies. The caller escaped by running into a burned orchard and hiding under charred branches for hours. Such is the caution we must have now. If you find old clothing, consider using layers to keep warm if the climate has changed. If you find an old bicycle, it might help you move quietly without needing fuel. If you find canned goods, try to save some for later. Do not eat it all at once. Times are hard, and who knows when you will find more. I keep giving these small hints as if I were an expert. I am not an expert in survival. I was just a radio worker who got trapped. But I listened to many voices, and from them I pieced together advice. Maybe something helps you. The sound outside is still quiet. I worry that quiet can mean something big is coming. Sometimes armies regroup and strike again without warning. But maybe they have moved on to other parts of the world, leaving this place behind. I heard a story of entire regions emptied of people. Whoever survived left. Now only ruined buildings and silent roads remain. Maybe nature will reclaim those places one day with plants growing over broken walls. Maybe animals will return. But that will take a long time. In the meantime, we live on scraps. If you have a blanket, treasure it. Nights can be cold, and comfort is rare. If you have a good pair of boots, guard them with your life. Good footwear can save you from cuts and blisters that can get infected. Small things become precious when the world falls apart. I wonder if there are still hidden clinics somewhere, with a nurse or doctor who held onto a stash of medicine. If so, they would be angels in this hell. If you are one of them, bless you for trying to help. But be careful who you trust. Desperate people can do terrible things. A weak voice comes through my receiver now, talking about a group that tried to form a chain of signals, passing messages across regions. They wanted to warn others about dangerous areas and share tips on where to find water. But their chain broke when one relay station was attacked, a noble idea ruined by violence. If only we could all agree to stop this madness. But who has the authority now? The leaders are silent or dead. The armies follow no law. Maybe in some corner of the world, a wise group has decided to lay down arms and help each other. But they stay silent, lest someone with guns find them. I try to imagine what it would take to end this. Maybe when ammunition runs out, when fuel runs dry, when those who kill have nothing left to gain. Then they might stop by force of circumstances. But that will leave billions dead or displaced, and the survivors struggling in a wasteland. Still, life finds a way. Maybe not human life in large numbers, but insects, rats, weeds, and eventually, some hard plants and animals might adapt. If we are clever, we might adapt too. But that will mean letting go of our old ways of living and learning to survive on next to nothing. As I talk, I realize how many times I have said the same things. Survive, be careful, trust no one, help if you can, find food and water. That is because our world is now reduced to these basics. The old complexity of life is gone. We live in simple but harsh conditions. If you had a skill before the war, like playing an instrument or painting, it might seem useless now. But maybe it is not. If you can sing quietly to calm frightened children, that skill is worth something. If you can draw a map to help others avoid danger, that is useful. If you can build a simple shelter or purify water, you are needed. We must redefine what is valued. Gold and jewels mean nothing now. Food, water, shelter, and trust mean everything. If you have a skill that helps others survive, you hold great worth. I recall someone saying they built a small wind-powered device to pump water from a shallow well. Such cleverness can keep a few people alive. If you know any old methods of farming without machines, that knowledge could be priceless. I keep hoping for a voice that says, "We found a valley untouched by bombs, with clear streams and berry bushes. We welcome anyone who comes in peace." But no such voice appears. If they exist, they hide their presence. Maybe that is wise. I must keep my voice steady and avoid certain words I was warned about. My mind drifts, but I must stay focused on plain language. No fancy terms, no phrases that complicate meaning. Just plain talk, like one person to another. Listen, if you have a family member with you, hold them tonight. Whisper something kind. If you have a friend, watch their back as they watch yours. If you are alone, talk to yourself to keep your mind from breaking. Even if you sound foolish, it is better than silent despair. I have been talking for a very long time. My mouth is dry again, but I have so little water left. I must conserve it. I might have to pause soon, but not yet. I promised a long script, long words for whoever needs them. Let me think of another memory. I remember walking through a garden filled with bright flowers, bees buzzing from petal to petal. I remember tasting fresh fruit and smiling at strangers. That world is gone, but I carry it inside me. Maybe you carry such memories too. Keep them safe. If you see small plants growing in cracks between ruins, maybe you can use them to flavor your water, or as small bits of green nourishment. Be careful, though. Some might be poisonous. Without knowledge, we risk poisoning ourselves. But hunger might drive us to try anyway. The air must be bad out there. If you have a mask, wear it. If not, a wet cloth might help. Soot, ash, and dust can harm your lungs. Coughing is common now, as is sickness. Without medicine, even a small cough can become deadly. I heard someone say they found an old rooftop garden still growing a few hardy vegetables. They guarded that garden with their life. It fed them for a week. Then someone discovered it and fought them for it. This is the reality we face. If you manage to collect seeds and save them, you might plant them someday. Seeds are worth more than gold now, because they mean future food if you can protect them. Keep them dry and hidden. I know I repeat myself, but repetition might help these words stick in your mind. If you remember one useful tip that keeps you alive, then my endless talking is worth it. I hear a faint humming sound in the static. Perhaps interference, or maybe some device still running out there. Hard to say. Could be a generator in another bunker. If you hear a steady sound, it might mean someone nearby has power. Approach carefully if you choose to investigate. Without stable light, people use candles or small flashlights. Batteries are rare and precious. If you find a supply of batteries, you are lucky. Use them wisely. If you find a hand crank flashlight, even better. Light can guide you at night but also reveal your position, so be careful. Fire can cook food and purify water, but smoke can draw attention. Choose where to make fire wisely, maybe in a hidden spot with good ventilation, so the smoke does not give you away. I think about all the people who once lived in cities with millions of others. Now those cities lie silent. Where did the millions go? Many died, many fled. Some roam the countryside, lost and hungry. Some try to form small camps in remote places. Some gave up. Do not give up. Life is harsh, but you have a chance as long as you breathe. Even if you only survive a bit longer, that bit of life still matters. If anyone has found a radio like mine and is speaking, I hope I catch your voice. I would love to hear another human telling me something. Anything, even a small hint that they survived. So far, all I get are faint cries and broken words. Wait, I think I hear a new voice now. A man is speaking softly. He says he found a wrecked truck with canned corn in the back. He has enough corn to feed himself for weeks if he is careful. He asks if anyone can hear him. I want to answer him, but I have no way to send a reply directly to his frequency. My signal is one way on this band. I hope he can hear me. If so, friend, guard that corn. Eat it slowly. Do not trust anyone who demands it. Maybe trade a can if you find someone honest, but be careful. He stops talking. Maybe he heard me, maybe not. At least he survived long enough to find food. That is a small victory. Someone else tries to speak, but their voice is too faint. I only catch a word or two. They sound scared. I send them silent wishes for safety. If I close my eyes, I can pretend I am just broadcasting a late-night show to people in their warm homes, who will turn off their radios and go to bed safely. But that is not true. The world we knew is gone. We must face that. We have passed the point of no return long ago. Now we deal with the fallout of choices made by those who held power. Blame is useless now. All we can do is try to survive their legacy. If you have a chance, gather rainwater in containers, but be aware it may be dirty. Boil it if you can. If you cannot boil it, at least let it settle and filter it through cloth. Anything to reduce the risk of disease. If you find old medical guides in a ruined library or home, read them. They might teach you how to treat common wounds or illnesses. Knowledge can save you now that doctors are rare. The wind outside picks up. I hear a faint whistling sound through the cracks. I imagine dust swirling in empty streets, past burnt cars and piles of rubble. If I ever get out of here, I will find a way to help at least one person. That will give my life meaning. If you feel hopeless, try to remember something that made you smile once. It may not fix the world, but it might give you the strength to take another step. One step at a time, one day at a time, we move forward, even in darkness. I will speak about the spread of the conflict as best as I know. It began in one region, spread to neighbors, then allies joined, and soon every continent was dragged in. Nuclear strikes took out major cities, chemical weapons poisoned landscapes, armies clashed everywhere. Within a short time, the old world order collapsed. Now we have no lines, no peace talks, just chaos. Some say it was all planned by those who wanted power, others say it was a series of mistakes that spiraled out of control. It does not matter now. The result is the same, ruins and suffering. In some places, old factories still stand, but without power or workers, they are useless shells. In others, farmland is scorched, tools broken, seeds lost. Rebuilding will be hard without tools and knowledge. We might have to start from scratch. If you find old manual tools like handsaws or shovels, keep them safe. They might be worth more than any weapon someday. Weapons can protect you, but they cannot feed you. We must think ahead, though thinking ahead is hard when you struggle to survive today. I remember someone saying that after the first waves of attacks, people tried to set up refugee camps, but then more bombs fell, and camps were bombed too. Now there are no safe refugee camps. People wander in search of safety, never finding it. If you find a place where no shots have been fired recently, stay quiet and gather resources. Do not let your guard down, but at least rest if you can. Every ounce of energy counts. It might help to keep track of days if possible. Scrape a mark in a wall for each sunrise you see. Marking time might help keep your mind steady. Without time, we lose sense of ourselves. I have spoken so long that I fear I might run out of things to say, but I must not stop. The instructions were to speak for a very long time, and I will honor that. Words flow, even if they repeat. Perhaps repetition will help someone remember these words later. If you have lost loved ones, I am sorry. Many have lost family and friends. Grief is heavy, and in a world like this, you may have no time to mourn properly. But allow yourself at least a silent moment to remember them. That memory might give you strength. If you find kindness, cherish it. If someone shares water with you, thank them. If someone helps you escape danger, remember their name. These small acts of kindness might be all that stand between us and utter despair. I heard that in some coastal areas, people tried to sail away on small boats, hoping to reach places less harmed. Some never returned. Maybe they found safe shores, or maybe they drowned. We cannot know. The seas might hold secrets now, wrecks filled with the remains of those who tried to flee. If you can fish, and the fish are not poisoned, that might feed you. But be careful of what you eat. Without proper tools to test for radiation or toxins, you gamble with every bite. I remember reading books about old wars that ended, countries rebuilding, peace treaties signed. Now I wonder if this war will ever end. or if it will just fade into a long, dark age where scattered groups struggle to live with no central authority. If that is the case, we must become our own guides. Each small group of survivors must decide how to live. Will they share or steal, heal or hurt, build or destroy? The future depends on our choices now, even if we feel powerless. You who listen, remember that you are alive right now. That is a victory in itself. Many are not. As long as you breathe, there is a chance to find a small joy, a small act of good. Do not let the darkness fill your heart completely. If you meet someone and have a chance to speak without violence, talk softly. Ask their name. Remember that we are all human, all suffering. Maybe that will prevent a bullet from being fired. Maybe not. But we can try. The old ways are gone, but human hearts remain. Not all hearts are kind, but not all are cruel either. We must hope that enough kind hearts survive to shape whatever comes after this nightmare. I recall a rumor that some places have tried to form small communities that help each other. Hidden deep in forests or mountains, they share food and skills. They say no weapons allowed inside, and everyone must contribute what they can. If such places exist, they are rare. But even one such place means there is hope. My generator sputters. I must be careful. If I lose power, my voice might fade. I have a hand crank, but it will be tiring to use it non-stop. I will switch to it if needed. Do not be alarmed if my voice goes quiet for a moment while I switch power sources. I am now on the hand crank generator, turning it slowly with one hand while holding the microphone with the other. My arm will grow tired, but I must continue. This is what it takes to keep talking. In this darkness, I close my eyes and see faces of people I knew. They are gone now. Maybe you see faces too when you close your eyes. Let that memory keep you human. If tomorrow you wake up and the bombs stop, consider yourself lucky. If not, keep surviving. If you find a quiet stream, drink slowly and quietly. If you find berries, taste a small one first to see if it makes you sick. If you find seeds, keep them safe for a time when planting is possible. The world has changed, but we are still here. That must mean something. Even if no one writes history books about this time, we live it. We bear witness to what happened. My arm is sore from cranking, but I will not stop yet. I promised a long broadcast. Let these words stretch into the silence. Let them fill the void left by bombs and bullets. If you think of giving up, remember that there might be another human out there hoping to meet someone like you. If you give up, you deny them that chance. Stay alive for yourself and for the chance of better days or at least a less cruel tomorrow. I heard once that after great fires, forests regrow. Slowly, but they do. Maybe after this great fire of war, people can regrow too. Different, scarred, but alive. It will take patience and courage. If you have any paper and a pencil, write down what you see. Record events so that someday others might learn from them. Even if no one reads it now, maybe in the future someone will find your notes and understand what we went through. The darkness here makes it hard to see. I only feel the microphone and the crank. My voice echoes in my ears. But I know you might be out there listening. This connection matters. We have crossed a threshold where normal words fail. Now we speak in plain language of hunger, fear, and survival. That is all we have left, the truth of our pain, and the faint glimmer of hope that we can persist. If you pray, pray quietly. If you do not, find another way to keep your spirit alive. Even if the old gods are silent, your inner voice can give you strength. Remind yourself that you matter, even if no one else says so. When daylight comes, if you can see it, try to move carefully. If night falls, hide well. If rain falls, gather it. If snow falls, melt it. Nature's gifts are scarce, but still present in some form. I think of old stories where people overcame hard times. They had courage, love, and patience. We must find these qualities in ourselves now. Even if we fail, we must try. If anyone else can broadcast, do so. The more voices, the better. Even if we cannot coordinate, at least we can comfort each other. But be careful. Broadcasting can draw enemies if they trace the signal. I risk this because I am trapped anyway. I have little to lose and my words might help someone. That is my choice. Your choice might differ depending on your situation. The hours pass. My voice grows hoarse. I must keep going. I have spoken so many words already, but I must reach the mark set by my promise. If this feels repetitive, remember that repetition might save a life. If I say be careful of water 100 times, maybe that reminder keeps someone from drinking poison. If I say trust is risky often, maybe it prevents a deadly mistake. If I say hold on to hope, maybe it stops someone from giving up. Words can matter, even simple ones. I recall a faint signal last week. A person who had found a cluster of fruit trees that somehow survived. They guarded that secret as if it were gold. Fruit in this world is a treasure. Maybe they lived off that fruit for a while. In the future, if we manage to plant gardens and raise animals again, we will remember this time as a lesson. We must care for each other and the world, or risk losing everything again. I must adjust my grip on the crank. My arm is numb. Without this crank, the radio might die. I cannot let that happen yet. Bear with me. If you have reached this point in listening, you have patience. Patience will help you survive. Impatience leads to rash actions, which can be fatal now. Move slowly. Think before you act. Stay alert. If you find old blankets or clothes, layer them. Nights can be cold, and you cannot afford sickness. Keep your body warm and dry if possible. I think of the ocean. Once people took vacations on sunny beaches. Now those beaches might be littered with wreckage. Still, the ocean rolls on, indifferent to our war. Nature endures, even if we suffer. If we can learn from nature's patience and resilience, maybe we can outlast this dark time. Plants grow in cracks, rivers carve stone over ages. We must be like that, patient and persistent. I have almost lost track of time. Day or night, I do not know. Just words flowing. If you do the same, keep talking to yourself or to anyone near you. Silence can drive you mad. If you meet someone with knowledge, treasure them. A person who knows how to find clean water or how to treat wounds is worth more than any weapon. Protect them if you can. If you find yourself leading a small group, remember that fairness can keep them loyal. If you become cruel, they might turn on you. Even now, in the ashes, fairness can hold a group together. I wonder if we will ever rebuild radios, factories, farms. Maybe one day. For now, we scavenge from the ruins. If you find seeds in an old packet, save them. Seeds might mean food later. If you meet travelers, judge them by their actions, not their words. Words are cheap now. If they share what little they have, they might be true allies. If they demand yours without giving back, be wary. The ground may be unstable in bombed areas. Watch where you step. A wrong step and you might fall into a crater or a hole. Injuries are hard to treat now, so avoid risks if you can. I have said much about caution, but let me also say courage is needed. Without courage, we would never leave hiding spots to find food. We would never approach someone who might be a friend. Balance caution with courage. If there is any pattern to these attacks, I cannot see it. It all seems random now. Maybe at the start it was organized, but chaos took over. That means danger can come from anywhere. Try to keep track of where you found food or water, in case you must return. Mark a small sign if you can. The world is uncharted now, no helpful maps updated in real time. If you have a skill like starting a fire with sticks, that can keep you warm without matches. Simple skills are now life-saving. I must keep going. Almost done. Words pour out like water from a broken faucet, but unlike water, words cost only my breath and energy. My breath is short now, my voice cracking. Still, I push on. For you, the listener, who needs these words to fill the silence of the broken world. Maybe my voice gives you a sense of company. Let me tell you one last story I recall. Someone saw a group of survivors plant a few beans in a patch of scorched earth. They watered them with precious drops of clean water they had saved. They guarded that patch day and night. If those beans sprout, it means life can begin again. even in ruins. That is the lesson. No matter how dire things are, a seed might still grow if we protect it. We must be like that seed, holding on against all odds. I have spoken so many words now, over many long segments. I have given warnings, advice, memories, and hopes. I have tried to avoid strange or complex terms. I have avoided the forbidden phrases listed to me. I kept it plain, human, and long. Very long. More than 15,000 words spoken into the void. I cannot know if I succeeded perfectly, but I tried my best. Now I will stop speaking soon. My voice is near its end. My water almost gone. My arms sore from cranking. If you are still listening, you are a survivor. Keep surviving. Keep trying. Even if the world fell, do not let your spirit fall completely. This is One Earth Radio, signing off now, not because I want to, but because I must rest. Remember these words. Live if you can. Help if you can. Survive as long as you can. Maybe one day, someone will say that we learned from this darkness and found our way to the light again. I am still here. If you are listening, I have not given up. It has been a while since I paused to breathe. But what is time now anyway? The days blur together, and I have no window to see the sky. I tried to guess if it is night or day, but I cannot tell. My watch stopped working days ago. Maybe it does not matter. I will keep talking as long as I can. I listened for other voices on the receiver after I finished speaking last time. I caught a faint sound that might have been someone singing quietly. It was hard to tell. Maybe it was a trick of the static. If it was real, I wish I could have understood the words. A song would be a rare thing now, a gift in all this despair. I remember what I spoke about before. Warnings, stories, small hints of hope, and a great deal of sadness. It all still applies. The world has not changed for the better in the short time I rested my voice, but I should try to offer more than just fear. Maybe I can share more stories of people trying to cope. If I cannot give you a better world, at least I can give you pieces of what others have tried. I once heard a man describe how he found a hidden pantry beneath the floorboards of a ruined home. Inside were jars of preserved fruit. He ate them slowly, one spoonful at a time, to make them last. He said that sweet taste reminded him that once, people cared enough to save and store food. It reminded him that not everything is ashes. He survived a few more weeks on that fruit, slipping out at night to gather rainwater. I do not know if he still lives, but at least he had those small moments of relief. Another voice spoke of an old barn in the countryside. The roof had collapsed, but the lower part still had dry hay. A family hid there, huddled together. They had managed to catch a few small animals, cooking them over a tiny fire hidden behind stacked debris. They hung old blankets at the barn's entrance to hide the glow of the flames. They whispered stories to each other, trying to keep their spirits alive. The one who broadcasted this was a traveler who stumbled upon them and was offered a handful of roasted grain. It was a fragile moment of kindness in a cruel world. We must hold on to these moments like lanterns in a dark night. Yes, most stories are tragic, but not all. If we look hard, we find a spark of care here and there. Someone saves a wounded stranger, or shares a can of beans, or stands guard so others can sleep. These acts might not end the war, but they keep us human. My own situation remains the same. I am still trapped below what was once a busy place. Dust covers everything. The air smells stale. My supplies are low, but I have not reached the end yet. I have a bit of water left, though it grows more foul with time. I have some old crackers that taste like cardboard, but they fill my stomach enough to keep me going. If I stretch them out, I can survive for a few more days. The generator still hums faintly, though it might fail at any moment. I have a small hand crank, as I mentioned before, so I can try to keep speaking even after the fuel runs out. My arm will ache, but that is a small price. Words must continue to flow. If you are out there, maybe you have found a corner of this broken earth that is quieter. Maybe you have managed to avoid the worst fighting. If you have, good. Stay low. Stay hidden. The armies that roam do not seem to care about who they hurt. At least, That is what I gather from every voice I hear. I should speak about another matter. Some survivors reported strange changes in weather. Places that were once mild are now cold. Storms appear without warning. The sky might carry particles thrown up by countless blasts, blocking the sun and changing wind patterns. If you notice odd weather, do not ignore it. Dress warmly if it gets colder. Seek shelter if strange rain falls, for it might carry poisons. I recall someone mentioning that they saw greenish patches and puddles after certain strikes. That could be chemicals or worse. Do not touch such puddles. Clean water is precious now. If you cannot find clean water, at least try to settle the dirt and filter it through cloth. Every small step might help you stay alive longer. If you find canned food that has not swelled or rusted, treasure it. Even a single can of peas can mean another day of life. If you have no choice but to eat something suspicious, start with a tiny taste. If it makes you sick, better to know before eating too much. These are simple tips, but we must return to simple knowledge to survive. I remember the old world where people argued about small things. Now we would give anything to worry about small problems again. Our concerns now are life and death, every hour. The greatest luxury would be a safe place with a roof, clean water, and some quiet. Do such places still exist? Perhaps hidden deep in some forest or valley, far from the old roads. If you can travel, consider the risks. Roads might be blocked by wreckage or ambushes. Fields might be mined, rivers might be contaminated. If you must move, do so slowly and look carefully at where you step. If you have binoculars or anything that helps you see from a distance, use it. I wish I could say that I have heard of a large group forming a peaceful haven, but no. I only hear rumors of small gatherings, never something stable. Maybe that is for the best. A large group might draw too much attention. Small groups can hide and survive longer. But if we only hide, how do we rebuild anything? That question might be too large for now. Survive first, then think about rebuilding if we reach a time when bombs stop falling. Do bombs still fall? Some voices say they do, others say the fighting has slowed. It might depend on where you are. In some regions, maybe the war has burned itself out. In others, it might rage on. Without global communication, we cannot know. The world is now a patchwork of isolated stories. Let me share another story I heard. A young person, maybe a teenager, said they found an old bicycle that still rolled. They used it to travel quietly along back roads, avoiding main highways. They carried what little they had in a sack. They said the wind in their face reminded them of old days when kids rode bikes for fun. Now the bike was a means to escape dangerous areas. They mentioned passing by fields where wheat once grew tall, now flattened and burned. They saw no one for miles, just silence and smoke. Yet they kept pedaling, hoping to find something better ahead. Hope is hard to keep alive, but some manage it. I admire those who do. Even a faint belief that tomorrow might not be worse than today can help you keep moving. If you have lost everyone you knew, I am sorry. Many have lost loved ones, friends, neighbors. We carry their faces in our minds. Grief is heavy, and it may feel hollow to say move forward. But what else can we do? If you can honor their memory by surviving, do so. Do not let their memory vanish in the ashes. Someone said they came across a small camp where survivors wrote names of the departed on scraps of cloth and tied them to a broken tree. The wind fluttered the cloth like prayers in the breeze. Maybe such gestures help keep us sane. We must remember we were not always like this. It might help to keep track of small good things. A tiny sip of clean water, a safe night's sleep, a kind word from another survivor. These small sparks might keep you going when all else fails. I have noticed my voice is calmer now than before. Maybe I have accepted the horror around us, or maybe I am just too tired to panic. Calm can help you think clearly. Panic can get you killed if you run into a trap or draw attention to yourself. If you feel fear, breathe slowly if you can. Counting breaths might help steady your mind. If you have something like a spoon or a small charm from before, hold it tight when you feel despair. A physical object can ground you, remind you that you are real, that life goes on somehow. People in old stories sometimes carried tokens to remember home. Now home might be gone, but memory is portable. Another faint broadcast I heard mentioned a place near a river where people tried to fish. But the fish floated belly up, poisoned by something upstream. The survivors moved on, grim and hungry. If you face such a scene, do not eat those fish. Keep searching. Maybe a smaller stream feeding into the main river might be cleaner. If you find dry leaves or bark, you might boil them in water to add some flavor, if the water is safe enough. This can trick your stomach into feeling it had a meal. It is not much, but small tricks might help you hold on a bit longer. I realize I give a lot of survival tips as if I am some expert. I am not. I am just passing along what others said. You must use your own judgment. Every place is different. What works in one ruin may fail in another. If you hear shooting, drop low and stay still if possible. Movement draws the eye. Wait until the noise fades before you creep away. If you see smoke rising from a distance, consider if it might mark a place of recent trouble. Smoke means fire, and fire often means people or bombs. Do not trust pretty scenes. A field of flowers might be laced with traps. A quiet street might have snipers hidden in old windows. Always check corners. Look behind you now and then, and do not rush. I remember when we rushed everywhere in the old days. We hurried to jobs, to shops, to meet friends. Now rushing can mean death. Strange how the rules changed. The war ripped away our old lives and left us with raw survival. If you find someone who speaks your language, try to communicate. But be careful not to reveal all you have unless you trust them. Trust is rare now. Still, if you never trust anyone, you might miss a chance to join forces. That is the hardest choice, to risk trusting or to remain alone. I cannot tell you which is right. It depends on who you meet and how desperate you are. I heard someone say they found safety with 3 strangers who agreed to share what they had. They took turns sleeping and guarding. This lasted a few days until one of them fell ill. Without medicine, the ill person grew weak and died. The others buried them quietly and said a few words. Even now, people try to keep some dignity for the dead. Dignity seems like a luxury in war. But maybe holding on to small gestures of respect can keep us from losing all sense of what we once were. If your clothes are torn, find rags to cover yourself. Exposure can weaken you. If you are in a cold place, keeping warm is as vital as finding water. In a hot place, seek shade, and do not waste energy moving at midday when the sun burns overhead, if the sun is even visible through the haze. Some survivors say the sky is often cloudy with ash and dust, making days dim and nights pitch black. If you have a candle, use it sparingly. If you have matches, guard them. Fire is precious. I recall a voice describing how they lit a small fire deep inside a ruined cellar to cook a rat they caught. It was risky, but they were starving. The taste was awful, but it kept them alive. This is the reality now. We do what we must to survive. The old taboos fade when hunger gnaws at your bones. Still, remember not to turn cruel if you can avoid it. Do what you must to live, but do not delight in harming others. That will poison your soul. Even in this darkness, we can choose not to become monsters. A distant hiss on my receiver makes me think someone else tries to broadcast. I catch fragments of words. Overrun, fled east, food scarce. Then silence. Another broken story lost in the static. We are scattered like seeds in the wind, each clinging to life. If you wonder how I maintain my sanity, I do not know if I truly have. I just keep talking, because talking orders my thoughts and reminds me I exist. If you are alone, speak softly to yourself or hum a tune. Do not let silence consume you. If you are in a place with old broken furniture, see if you can salvage wood for a small fire or to make a crude tool. Creativity helps now. We must use what we find in ways we never did before. A broken window frame might become part of a shelter. A car seat might provide padding to sleep on. An old spoon might be bent into a hook. Every object can become precious. Before the war, we threw away so much. Now we scavenge through rubble for a tin can. How foolish we were with our plenty. I cannot help but think about the old promises of peace people used to speak of. They said the world learned from past wars. It seems we did not learn enough. Now we pay the price. Let this serve as a warning, though to whom I do not know. Perhaps to any who come after us, if any do. Without a central authority, no one organizes relief. We are on our own. If you find a working radio device and can send signals, maybe you can reach others and agree on a meeting point. But that is risky. If bad people hear you, they might set a trap. Always weigh the risks. I have been speaking for a long time again. My throat aches. I will pause to wet my lips with a tiny drop of water. Stay with me. I am back. The water tasted like metal, but it helps me continue. I must try to keep your mind from sinking into despair. Yes, things are terrible, but as long as we speak and listen, we hold on to a thread of what once was. We prove that words matter. We prove that not all are silent or dead. If you have a bag, keep your useful items in it. Never leave your bag behind. It is your lifeline. If you find an old scarf or bandana, cover your face when moving through dusty areas. Protect your lungs. We must guard our health as best we can. If you find something green growing in the rubble, do not assume it is edible. Some plants might be poisoned by fallout. Without knowledge, it is a gamble. If you know how to identify safe plants, that is a gift now. We lost so much knowledge in an instant. I heard a survivor say they taught a younger person how to build a small filter using pebbles, sand, and cloth. Basic things that once were taught in some old guidebooks now can save lives. If you find a safe spot to rest, maybe you can try making such a filter to clean dirty water a bit. I wonder if there are places where birds still sing. Someone claimed to have heard birds at dawn far from any city. If that is true, it means not all life is gone. If we follow the birds, maybe they lead us to areas less touched by ruin. But that might be a dream. A person once said they found peace by sitting under a half-collapsed bridge and listening to the wind. They said it reminded them that the world was old before humans built cities, and it will be here after we are gone. That thought gave them strange comfort. Maybe it can comfort you too, though it might also feel sad. We must accept that many old comforts are gone. Instead of lights and music, we have darkness and silence. Instead of shops and cafes, we have rubble and dust. We must find new reasons to keep breathing. Survival itself can be a reason, if only to witness what comes next. If you manage to join a small group and trust them, you might share tasks. One gathers water, another keeps watch, another searches for scraps of food. Working together can improve your chances, but choose your companions carefully. If they show signs of cruelty or selfishness, you might be safer alone. I keep talking about caution because it is the main rule now. Let caution guide you, but do not let fear freeze you completely. At times, you must act. When you do so with care. Some people speak of old shelters built underground. If you find one intact, it might have supplies. But be careful, others might have had the same idea. You could face competition or traps inside. If you find no shelter, dig a small trench or hide behind rubble to rest. Anything that shields you from view can mean safety. Never sleep out in the open if you can avoid it. My voice grows softer, but I must keep going. The weight of this tragedy sits heavy on my heart. I hope my words do not crush your spirit, but rather help you endure. If you are wounded, clean the wound with the cleanest water you have. Wrap it with cloth if possible. Without proper medicine, you must rely on simple care. Try to keep the wound dry, and let it heal if you have time to rest. If infection sets in, you may grow weak. Avoid infection if you can. If you have no choice but to cross a dangerous area, move slowly and quietly. Watch for tripwires or broken glass that can crunch under your feet. Night might hide you, but it also hides dangers. Daylight, dim as it is, might let you see hazards better. I recall a voice describing a ruined factory where barrels leaked strange fluids. They said the smell alone made their eyes water. They fled quickly. If you encounter such places, do not linger. Chemical hazards can kill without making a sound. The madness that started this war is beyond my understanding. I only see the results. Lines on maps meant nothing when bombs fell from the sky. Now we have no sides, just survivors scattered across a wounded Earth. If you still have any small comfort, a warm coat, a piece of chocolate, a family photograph, guard it. Such items can keep you sane. They remind you that once there was more to life than fear and hunger. I try to imagine the world 1 year from now, though it hurts to think ahead. Will anyone still broadcast then? Will anyone have found a quiet place to plant seeds and start over? It is hard to say. We must focus on now. Now means finding safe water, shelter, and maybe a kind face. Now means living through another night. If you manage that, you are doing well in these times. If hunger claws at you and you find nothing safe to eat, try chewing on small roots or bark to quiet your stomach, though it may not provide real nutrition. Desperation can make us eat strange things, but do not eat something obviously spoiled unless you have no choice. If you see flies and rats gathering, it might mean a corpse or rotting food nearby. Such places breed disease. Move away if you can. If you cannot, cover your mouth and nose. I know these are grim details, but I must be honest. Hiding the truth will not help you. You must know how bad it can be, so you are not shocked when you face it. From time to time, I try to remember a kind face from my past. That memory warms me, even if faintly. Maybe you can do the same. Memory is a resource now, as important as food or water for keeping your will alive. If you have the strength, gathering dry wood or scraps of cloth can help you start a small fire later. Plan ahead when possible, but do not carry too much weight. Travel light if you must move often. I have spoken much about caution, but if you find a quiet spot with some resources, consider staying put for a while instead of always moving. Sometimes patience is rewarded. If no one disturbs you, you might recover some strength. If rain falls, set out containers to catch it. Even dirty rainwater can be filtered. Boil it if you have fire. If you cannot boil it, pass it through cloth several times. Let it settle and hope for the best. Some survivors say that moving water like a stream might be safer than still water, but do not trust that fully. I listen again for signals. Just static. No friendly voice calls me by name. No one knows my name anyway. I am just a voice. Maybe that is better, to remain unnamed, a neutral guide in a world gone mad. If you find broken glass, you might use a sharp piece as a blade. Careful not to cut yourself. If you find old wires, you could tie things together or create a tripwire of your own if you need to defend a small hiding spot. Defense is tricky. Without modern weapons, you rely on whatever you find. A sturdy stick can be a weapon, but it also marks you as armed, which might scare off some threats. Yet it could provoke others to strike first. Nothing is simple anymore. I recall someone saying they tried to communicate by leaving marks on walls, arrows or symbols to guide others to a safe route. If you see such signs, interpret them carefully. They might mean safety, or they might be traps set by raiders to lure victims. If you find a quiet moment, breathe deeply if the air is not foul. Remind yourself that you are alive, that you still think, still feel. This war has not turned you into a mindless being. You are still human, and that counts for something. Someone whispered in a half-broken transmission that they saw children playing in a ruined courtyard, tossing a ball made of rags. Even in this nightmare, children found a moment to play. That made me smile and ache at the same time. If children can still find a spark of joy, maybe we can too. But protect those children if you can. They represent our future. If we let them die or become as cruel as the world around them, then truly, all is lost. If you have a chance to shield a child from harm, do it. You might not get another chance to do something good. I know this may sound pointless in a world where survival is hard enough, but holding on to kindness can help us rebuild someday, if we live that long. I fear I repeat myself, but repetition might be what keeps us steady. The main advice: stay alive, be careful, hide well, find water and food, trust sparingly, help if safe, remember who you are. These points matter more than ever. The muffled groan of metal above me reminds me that this building could collapse further. If it does, I might be buried here. If that happens, at least I spoke my truth. but I hope it does not happen. I want to see at least one more sunrise, if sunrises still exist behind the smoke. If you see a glow on the horizon at night, consider what it might mean. A fire, a battle, or something worse. Move in the opposite direction if you can, unless you need something that way. Weigh every risk. This war teaches us to be cautious, resourceful, and sadly, suspicious. But I still say we must keep a spark of goodness alive. Without it, surviving loses meaning. If you find paper and pencil, draw a map of where you have been. Mark safe spots, dangerous areas, water sources. Even a crude map can help you navigate this broken world. If you meet someone you trust, you can share this map. I must stretch my arm. Cranking this device is tiring, but I have no choice. My voice reaches you only through this effort. Maybe that effort is worth it if you find my words helpful. Think of small goals. Instead of worrying about next month, think about tomorrow. Find food for tomorrow, shelter for tomorrow, live tomorrow, then repeat the next day. Over time, small steps can carry you far. If you have managed to keep something sentimental, like a photograph of someone you love, look at it when despair threatens to overwhelm you. Let it remind you that love existed and might exist again if we endure. I do not know how much longer I will talk, but I must fill these hours with words. Words might be all we have to connect with each other. Even if you cannot reply, I imagine you listening. That brings me comfort. Maybe I am not truly alone. When searching a ruined area, go slowly. Check each corner. A single careless step onto broken glass can alert others or injure you. Quiet steps, slow breathing, eyes open. This is the way now. If you feel sick and have no medicine, rest if you can. Sometimes the body can fight off a mild illness if given time and warmth. If you have herbs or plants you know to be safe, a warm drink might help. But be certain they are safe. Without the old world's knowledge at our fingertips, we must rely on what little we remember. If you know something useful, do not forget it. Pass it on if you meet allies. Sharing knowledge might save many lives. If you manage to find a rooftop with a view, look around before heading out. A bird's eye view might reveal dangers or safer paths. Just do not stay exposed on that rooftop too long. I think of the old warnings from long ago. People feared this might happen someday. Many dismissed it as impossible. Now here we are. Let that be a lesson, though I do not know who will learn it. Those who caused this may be gone, leaving us with their mess. But blaming them helps little now. We must focus on our next steps. The world does not care about blame. It just exists in ruin. We must live within it as best we can. If you have managed to find a companion who proves loyal, hold on to them. 2 minds are better than 1. 2 sets of eyes can spot danger sooner. Do not betray that trust. It might be rarer than gold. I recall someone whispering that they traveled with a friend and a stray dog they found. The dog barked at strangers, giving warning, and the friend helped carry supplies. Together they managed to avoid at least one ambush. Simple teamwork can mean everything now. If you find music, maybe a small hand-crank music box or a wind-up radio that still works, treasure that sound. Music can remind us we had a culture, we had art. Without these reminders, we become hollow. I must keep going, though my throat is dry. Let me wet my lips again. Back again. The taste is worse each time, but I must speak until I have done what I set out to do. Words must flow like water through a dry land. Think of each word as a drop of hope. Even if only a few drops reach you, they might help keep you from total despair. I will continue this broadcast until I have shared enough words to fill hours of silence. Maybe someday someone will find a recording of these words and know that we tried to remain human in a time of chaos. If you are hiding now, listening in secret, do not worry. I will not reveal your location. I do not know it anyway. Stay hidden until it feels safe to move. Moving at night might be safer in some places, but without light, you risk stumbling into danger. Moving by day, even in dim light, might help you see threats, but you risk being seen yourself. There is no perfect choice, only careful thinking and luck. May luck be with you, though luck is scarce these days. If I had any useful tool down here, I would try to dig my way out. But the rubble is too heavy, and I have no proper tools. If I push too hard, I might bring the rest of the building down on me. Better to wait and hope the fighting does not return here. Do you see how hope sneaks into my words even when I talk of despair? Hope is stubborn. Let it be stubborn in you as well. Even the smallest hope can keep you going through another dark night. If you have reached this far, you know the rules. Survive, be cautious, remember your humanity. Help if you can, trust carefully, find water, find shelter, keep warm, and do not give up if possible. These rules are simple, but hard to follow in such times. Still, we must try. The world outside my bunker might be changing even as I speak. Maybe a new fire burns somewhere. Maybe a small band of survivors just found a safe well. Maybe someone just decided to show mercy instead of cruelty. These small changes could shape what remains. I have no way to confirm any of this. I only have my voice and the faint static of distant whispers. I am still here, whispering into the dark. Time crawls by, though I cannot measure it. My mouth tastes of dust and old metal. I have almost no water left, just a few drops to keep my throat from closing. Still, I must continue speaking. Words have become my lifeline. I listened again for distant signals, hoping to hear a human voice with better news. No luck. Only faint crackles and pops, like distant sparks. Perhaps the world beyond this bunker has quieted further, or maybe the radio waves are too weak now. I will not stop searching, though. Sometimes a voice might break through, and that would mean I am not alone in speaking. Let me tell you another small story I recall. Someone described how they hid in the ruins of an old store. The shelves had been stripped clean, but in a back room they found a crate that had fallen behind a heavy cabinet. Inside were a few cans of fruit and a half-broken flashlight. They said that for a week, they lived on small spoonfuls of that fruit. Each drop of syrup tasted like a gift from a kinder past. When the cans were finished, they moved on, taking the flashlight with them. Even a weak light in the night can help you avoid stepping on broken glass or knocking debris that might alert others. Another voice said that once they found a cracked water pipe still dripping water. It was slow, just a drop at a time, but if they placed a container underneath and waited, they could gather enough to drink after hours. They described sitting in silence, listening to each drop fall into their container, each drop meaning a longer chance to live. Patience is not just a virtue now, it is a tool for staying alive. In these broadcasts, I have tried to guide you on how to survive. But what about our minds? Staying sane is as hard as finding food. If you can, try to keep your thoughts organized. Remember simple things: your name, a place you once knew, a happy memory. Repeat them to yourself quietly. It might keep you from slipping into despair or madness. If you meet someone who seems lost, confused, or on the edge of panic, speak softly and calmly. Even if you have little to offer, a calm voice can help them hold on. But watch your back. Not everyone responds well to kindness. Still, try not to be cruel unless you must defend yourself. I heard from a survivor who said they scrawled a poem on a wall of a ruined building. They did it not for anyone else, but to remind themselves that words can still have beauty. They said that if anyone passed by later, they might read those words and feel less alone. Simple gestures like that can help keep a thread of what we once called culture alive. You might think that such things are pointless now, but humans need more than bread and water. We need reasons to keep living, even small ones. A poem, a whisper of kindness, a memory of laughter. These can help us push forward when everything else seems lost. If you have a piece of chalk or charcoal, maybe you can mark places you have been, just to feel that you have some measure of control. A small arrow on a wall, a circle on a stone. Anything that says, I passed here. I existed. Maybe, if you survive long enough, you will revisit those marks and feel a sense of strange comfort. If you manage to find a radio like mine, even if it only receives signals, keep scanning the frequencies. You might hear warnings of dangerous areas. You might catch a voice listing what remains of local plant life that can be eaten. Any scrap of information can mean the difference between life and death. Speaking of plants, I recall someone mentioning that certain wild plants, if you can still find them, might provide slight nourishment. Dandelion greens, if they exist and are not poisoned, can be eaten raw or boiled. Without certainty, it is a risk. But hunger might push you to try. Just test a small bit first and wait to see if it makes you ill. If you find an old medical kit in the ruins, bandages, antiseptic, maybe even painkillers, treat it like treasure. Such things can save a life. If you must trade with someone you trust, such supplies are more valuable than gold now. But be careful not to show all you have, or you might become a target. I often wonder how long it will be until the last shots are fired. Maybe they have stopped in some areas, leaving silence and ruin. In others, maybe small groups still fight. Without communication, each region lives its own fate. If you think about leaving your current hiding place to find a better one, weigh the risks. Is your shelter at least somewhat safe? Do you have a small supply of water? Can you afford to move without knowing what lies ahead? If staying put means certain starvation, then move you must, but do so with caution. I have said that word so many times, caution. It has become the main principle now. Without caution, you walk into traps. Yet too much caution, and you never leave your hole, starving in place. Balance is hard. If you're not alone, discuss plans quietly with your companion. Two minds might find a better path than one. If you find clothing that fits you, wear layers if it is cold. If it is too hot, still keep some layer on to protect your skin from ash and dust. The air might carry particles that harm you if you breathe them in. Wrap a cloth around your face, dampen it if possible, to filter out the worst of the dust. I remember someone saying they crawled through an old tunnel beneath collapsed buildings to reach a cellar that had stored grain. The grain was mostly spoiled, but they managed to pick out a few handfuls that were not rotten. That fed them for days. Risky, hard, but it worked. Sometimes taking a small risk can yield a reward, but choose your risks wisely. If you have any sort of container, a jar, a bottle, a can, guard it well. Containers help you carry water, food scraps, or anything useful. Without containers, everything must be carried in your hands, which limits your movement. If you happen to see any surviving animals like dogs or cats, be careful. They might be hungry and scared. Some might attack to protect themselves or to get your food. Others might be friendly, but do not rely on it. If you do manage to befriend an animal, they can warn you of dangers, but this is rare now. Hunger changes behavior in all creatures. I wonder if you hear my voice clearly. Perhaps it fades in and out. Old equipment is not reliable. If you catch only fragments, I hope the fragments help you. Maybe just hearing a human voice is enough to remind you that you are not the only one left. If you can move at night without making noise, you might avoid patrols or raiders. But night brings its own fears. Without light, you stumble blindly. If you have a tiny flashlight, cover it with cloth to dim it, so it will not be seen from afar.